In the headlines this evening, Korea and China conclude more than 30 months of free trade negotiations. The two are hoping to have the deal go into effect at the middle of next year. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe hold summit talks on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in Beijing for the first time in more than 2 years. And the question of why North Korea suddenly released 2 American detainees is still lingering in many minds. Stay tuned for these stories and more coming right up. It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Thank you for joining us. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. Let's start with Korea and China ending 2.5 years of free trade talks.
That's right. That announcement was confirmed during a one-on-one between President Park Geun-hye and Chinese leader Xi Jinping ahead of the official opening of the APEC summit.
And the two leaders also discussed the prospect of a three-way foreign ministers meeting with Japan. Our Choi Yu-sun files us this report from Beijing.
The leaders of Korea and China meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing made a long-awaited announcement regarding their bilateral free trade agreement.
이 한중 FTA가 2년여간의 협상 끝에 드디어 핵심 사안에 합의해서 오늘 정상회담을 계기로 협상이 실질적 타결되었음을 발표하게 돼서 기쁘게 생각합니다.
The two presidents then talked about how the Korea-China FTA will be welcomed by the global economy, currently experiencing a delayed recovery and low growth.
I hope that the two sides will keep pushing for continuous and in-depth development in bilateral exchanges and cooperation.
Seoul and Beijing say they will remove tariffs on more than 90% of their previously agreed products over the next 20 years. And rice, a super-sensitive product for Korean farmers, has been excluded altogether. Korea's presidential office says compared to all the bilateral FTAs it has with other countries, this one contains fewer agricultural products subject to tariff removal. With the latest FTA, Korea has secured free trade with pretty much all of the world's major economies, namely the US, the EU, ASEAN, and China, further bolstering its global trade network. Shifting gears to regional security, Presidents Park and Xi agreed that they should look into a tripartite foreign ministers meeting with Japan before the year's end. Historical and territorial differences in Northeast Asia have soured ties and at times caused tensions. On North Korea, Beijing said it clearly opposes Pyongyang's nuclear development program and that it abides by UN Security Council resolutions against the regime. The two presidents then expressed the need to seek creative and diverse ways to bring North Korea back to the six-nation denuclearization talks. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News, Beijing.
Right, so going back to the latest free trade pact, it is expected to give the Korean economy a very strong boost, with the agreement giving greater access to the Chinese market. Our Song Ji-sun delves deeper into the details on this bilateral trade pact between Seoul and Beijing.
Korea has become the first country among the world's top 10 trading nations to seal free trade deals with the US, the European Union, and now China. China is Korea's biggest trading partner, accounting for 1/5 of total trade volume, and research institutes suggest Korea's GDP will expand by 1 to 2% after the free trade deal goes into effect. Korean businesses would also enjoy tariff reductions of an estimated $5.4 billion a year.
We expect to accelerate entry into China's consumer goods and domestic markets. Instead of Korean conglomerates, who have already globalized, we helped open the Chinese market for Korea's small and mid-sized businesses and the agro-fisheries industries.
With a tariff reduction, Korean clothing, electronics, and sporting goods companies are expected to gain a competitive edge in pricing, as are the traditional export engines like steel and petrochemicals. Following the agreement, Seoul aims to boost its bilateral trade volume between the two countries to $300 billion next year, helping to eventually achieve a government goal of topping GDP per capita of $30,000. Seoul put protecting the agriculture sector as its first priority, excluding rice, the country's most sensitive item, along with more than 600 other major agriculture, livestock, and fisheries products. That's equivalent to 30% of all items in the sector imported from China in terms of amount, which is the highest level of exemption in any free trade deal Seoul has already signed. 송지선, Arirang News.
It's been nearly 2 years since Xi Jinping ascended as president of China and Shinzo Abe returned as prime minister of Japan. But not once had the two men sat down for summit talks due to territorial and historical disputes. But that changed this Monday when they met face-to-face on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing. Our Hwang Sang-yi reports on how this could be a starting point for bettering relations.
Breaching normal protocol, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was the one to greet the stony-faced Chinese President Xi Jinping as he made his way in for their ice-breaking chat on Monday. The 30-minute meeting, held on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing, came at the request of Japan and was their first face-to-face talk since both leaders took power in late 2012. Differences over issues dating back to wartime and competing claims to a group of islets in the East China Sea have kept the two sides apart. In a statement, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said Xi told Abe it's clear who is at fault for their poor relations and asked Tokyo to do more things that help enhance the mutual trust between Japan and its neighboring countries. Speaking to reporters, Abe called the meeting a first step toward improving their relationship and creating mutually beneficial strategic ties. Prime Minister Abe said the two sides agreed to set up a hotline to prevent maritime clashes, expressing hopes that they will soon start administrative work to implement the system. While no groundbreaking deal was reached, experts say the handshake between the leaders of China and Japan could mark a turning point, calling the simple fact that they met significant. Hwang Sang-yi, Arirang News.
We keep our eyes fixated on the APEC summit currently underway in Beijing for now, and let's say China, as the host nation, will be using the opportunity to promote itself as a regional power, both on the economic and diplomatic fronts. Our Kim Young-gil looks into how Beijing might be looking to keep its biggest competition on the global stage, the U.S., in check.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has laid out his vision to lead the Asia-Pacific region, both economically and diplomatically. At the top of Beijing's agenda for this week's APEC summit is the Free Trade Area of the Asia-Pacific, or FTAAP. It's part of China's vision to consolidate and simplify the numerous free trade agreements within the region. China hopes to use this week's APEC summit as a venue to study and discuss the costs and benefits of the FTAAP, and would like to see it mentioned in the final draft of the summit's communiqué. Some Chinese experts view the FTAAP as a strategic move to counter the U.S.-led 12-nation Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, which excludes China. Washington has made implementation of the TPP a priority in expanding trade in the region. On top of the FTAAP, China will also be pushing its vision to set up the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which has been likened to China's version of the International Monetary Fund. The AIIB, to be established by the end of next year, will help finance infrastructure development in the Asia-Pacific region with an authorized capital of $100 billion. On the diplomatic side, China will be seeking to ease concerns about its rise, particularly with it entangled in a number of territorial disputes in the East and South China Seas and historical tensions with neighboring countries. While trying to ease those tensions, Chinese President Xi and those close to him will also present the case that they are a viable alternative and counterbalance to the United States, which has actively been trying to pivot to Asia. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Face a one-day entry ban.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Following North Korea's sudden release of 2 American detainees over the weekend are the questions of why and what kind of implications it might have on U.S.-North Korea relations. Arirang's Connie Kim spoke to experts in Seoul for their thoughts about Pyongyang's true intentions.
North Korea's surprise release of 2 American detainees is raising questions about Pyongyang's intentions. Some experts believe North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made the move over concerns he and others in his regime will be referred to The Hague for human rights violations.
North Korea is obviously pretty worried about the United Nations referring it to the International Criminal Court. You know, that would be a big loss of faith for the regime in front of its citizens.
Analysts say Pyongyang's move is also an attempt to make Beijing nervous.
Under Kim Jong-un's rule, China-North Korea relations have been frosty. If Pyongyang and Washington start talking, it will pressure Beijing to hold high-level talks with North Korea.
Although China remains North Korea's strongest ally, bilateral relations have turned cold under the Xi Jinping administration, due in part to the North's nuclear threat. But despite U.S. intelligence chief James Clapper's visit to the North, Washington has made clear that it will not hold talks with Pyongyang unless it first shows sincerity about halting its nuclear program. And then there is a question about what Clapper's trip means for North-South relations.
When the relationship with the United States gets better, the relationship with South Korea gets worse, and vice versa. It's all part of Pyongyang's strategy to divide and conquer, so to speak.
While experts say North Korea's release of its 2 detainees will have a positive impact on relations with Washington, they don't think it'll mean the same for ties with Seoul. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The South Korean military says it had to fire warning shots across its border with the North earlier this morning, and this may be just one example of how a premium is being placed on military readiness in the constant face of threats from North Korea. Now, that said, Seoul's military kicked off 2 weeks of military drills today, and our Kim Hyun-bin has this next report.
South Korea began its annual Hoguk defense exercise on Monday, with a record number of personnel from all branches of the military taking part. The goal, according to a statement from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is to bolster South Korea's defense posture against potential threats to regional stability, including those coming from North Korea. The 2 weeks of drills consist of numerous maneuvers, such as joint landing and maritime infiltration defense drills. More than 330,000 military personnel are taking part in the exercise, making it the largest ever Hoguk drill since the first one was staged in 1996. In past years, around 80,000 troops were involved. Over 23,000 fighting and transport vehicles are being used, along with 60 vessels and dozens of aircraft. An officer from the Joint Chief of Staff says the beefed-up exercise are in direct response to North Korea's recent provocations. On Friday, Pyongyang slammed South Korea for the planned drill, calling it practice for an invasion. In response, South Korean Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-suk stressed that the Hoguk drill has been conducted annually since 1996 to boost preparedness and coordination among the branches of the military. Meanwhile, the South Korean military says it fired 20 warning shots across its border with the North on Monday morning. This after around 10 North Korean soldiers approached the military demarcation line near Paju, north of Seoul. The North's military did not shoot back and retreated in the afternoon. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, U.S. President Barack Obama is shifting to what he calls a new phase in the battle against the Islamic State. The number of American military advisors dispatched to Iraq will be doubled as the fight transitions to one that is more offensive than defensive in nature. Our Connie Lee has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama is calling it a new phase in the fight against Islamic State. In an interview with CBS News, the president said the decision to send 1,500 more U.S. troops into Iraq, or nearly double the current number, shows the U.S. is in a position to start going on some offense, rather than just trying to halt the momentum of the Islamic State, or IS. President Obama reiterated that the troops will not be engaged in combat operations, but provide additional training for Iraqi soldiers and militia fighters on the ground. It may be helping. Recent video from Iraq's defense ministry shows its army recapturing 3 villages from IS militants west of Baghdad.
Troops of the 17th Infantry Division, 60th Brigade, backed by air support from Army Aviation, destroyed hideouts of Daesh in Al Refuge area. You have seen the bodies, and victory was achieved.
Meanwhile, U.S. officials have not yet confirmed reports that the leader of IS, Abu Bakr Baghdadi, was injured during an airstrike on Friday that hit a gathering of militant leaders in the northern Iraqi town of Mosul. With IS militants already having seized large areas in Iraq and Syria, President Obama is asking Congress for $5.6 billion for operations to stop their progress. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Sunday marked the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, while German Chancellor Angela Merkel says the fall showed the world that dreams can come true. A former leader of the Soviet Union has warned against another Cold War. Our Sun Jang-in reports.
A light installation was set to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall on Sunday. 8,000 illuminated balloons containing personal messages were released along a 15-kilometer stretch of the former border to signify the dissolution of not only the wall, but of the symbolic division between East and West. German Chancellor Angela Merkel led the celebrations attended by tens of thousands of people and honored those who helped bring down the wall, describing its fall as an example of the human desire for freedom. However, the day also served as a reminder that the scars of history remain in the people's hearts. Speaking at a separate event in Berlin, former leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, who is credited for his role in reuniting Berlin in 1989, warned that tensions between the U.S. and Russia over Ukraine could plunge the world into a new Cold War.
The world is on the brink of a new Cold War. Some say that it has already begun. And yet, while the situation is dramatic, we do not see the main international body, the UN Security Council, playing any role or taking any concrete action.
Renewed clashes between government forces and Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine over the weekend are raising concerns that tensions between the West and Russia will escalate even further. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Steel. It still is one of Korea's major export items, with outbound shipments accounting for more than half of the country's GDP.
That's right, but the country's leading steelmaker POSCO is losing ground in the global market, and that's no longer news. Our Hwang Ji-hye tells us how the company is or should cope with this situation. In the late 90s, POSCO was the #1 company in the global steel market in terms of productivity. But that was a long time ago. Today, it's the world's 6th largest steel maker, with Chinese mills quickly making up ground, or in some cases, even moving past POSCO. Is it a sign of things to come? Take a look.
China's steel exports are as strong now as they've ever been, hitting a record high in September. This has a lot to do with Chinese steelmakers looking to the global market with a slowdown in the domestic economy, but their low prices are also enticing global clients. This is bad news for Korea's largest steelmaker, POSCO.
Chinese competitors are starting to export to markets that POSCO does, which means more competition and slumping steel prices.
Given the market conditions, then, it should come as no surprise that POSCO's sales and profits have been on the slide for the past 3 years. Adapting to the new landscape, POSCO, which has nearly 50 affiliates, is offloading its non-steel units like department stores. But analysts say such a strategy cannot be a cure-all for POSCO.
POSCO should expand its marketing network and strategic alliances with its customers to innovate its steel products by cooperating with its customers.
In fact, the Korean steelmaker is already doing that, calling it strategy solution marketing.
POSCO has pledged to contribute to the development of its customers by introducing products that cater specifically to their needs. For example, by teaming up with French automaker Renault, POSCO developed high-strength but lightweight steel products for Renault's new hybrid car, leveling the playing field against cheap but lower-quality steel from China. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, with more and more people using social networking medium online, companies now have many more options for advertising. It's no longer limited to TV or newspaper ads. YouTube marketing is where it's at. And our Kim Min-ji reports on why this one particular method could be more effective and engaging.
Viral frenzy. Korea's distribution industry is taking its marketing campaigns online, and they're getting funnier and more sensational. This video featuring a fashion brand's fall and winter collection got 1.9 million views in just the first 2 weeks after going on YouTube.
YouTube marketing allows us to better deliver the story and concept of our brand. We can also check out instantly who is interested in our products, and the popularity of the ad leads to increased sales.
Paldo, a local food and beverage company, saw sales of its traditional rice drink Sikhae jump 35% after the release of an online ad, which it says allowed them to reach a larger consumer base. In some cases, it's not just about sales and numbers. This campaign of an online shopping mall, for one, looks to rebuild its image with a thank you message to postal workers.
Some people have a negative view about shopping advertisements, saying that it promotes spending. However, we actually see it as a way of linking people. We wanted to show our philosophy through the ad.
YouTube and other popular internet sites have become a favored marketing tool among companies. Unlike conventional TV ads, online advertisements are relatively cheap, can offer context, a sense of immediacy, and personalization all at once.
Industry watchers say although it costs less to produce these advertisements, the positive effects can be greater as the company gets its message out to a wider audience, especially if it goes viral. And the craze has boosted growth in the online ad market, particularly the mobile sector. Last year, the mobile advertisement market was valued at nearly $400 million, more than a five-fold increase from 2011. That makes up about 4% of the total domestic ad market. And with the exponential growth in the use of smart mobile devices, watchers say it's a market that is sure to get bigger. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
On to different news stories. The Korea Exchange says the benchmark Kospi has performed worse this year than any of the other 15 major markets around the world. Korea's main bourse is down 3.5% compared to the beginning of the year. That's the lowest level among bourses that each account for more than 1% of the world's market cap. The only other stock markets with negative growth were Germany's DAX, Britain's FTSE 100, France's CAC 40, all in the minus 2% range rather. India's Sensex soared 32%, followed by the Shanghai Composite Index and the S&P 500. Now the weather, we did get off to a rather cold start to the week here in Korea.
That's right. As a matter of fact, cold wave advisories were issued in some regions, and for more, Kim Bo-kyung joins us from the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, what do you have for us?
Good evening, guys. Some regions did wake up to cold wave advisories this morning. However, temperatures quickly rose to the mid to high teens by the afternoon, and numbers should drop to the single digits as the night progresses, so make sure to dress warmly. At the moment, we are under bright and clear skies nationwide due to a high pressure front from China, and as for tomorrow, conditions should continue to remain brisk and chilly, but do keep in mind that there is a possibility of showers of less than 5 millimeters for parts of Gyeonggi-do province. Looking ahead, nationwide rain is in store this Wednesday, leading to a dip in numbers on Thursday, which is college entrance exam day here in Korea. And other than that, bright and cool autumn weather is in store throughout the week. Here are the readings for tomorrow. Seoul and Gwangju hit 15, Daegu 17, Busan 19. On to other regions. Daejeon reaches 14, Jeju and Dokdo 16, Mount Kumgang remains cooler. Those are the updates we're following at this hour. I'll be back with more after 8. See you soon.
Thank you for that, Po-kyung. That does it for us. Have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We will be back same time tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.